All right, that represents quorum, right?
Yes, and we've got 5 jurisdictions.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Rhonda. Are we broadcasting live or do we need a moment to go live?
You are live.
Excellent. Well, good evening, everyone. This is Kitty Crystal speaking for those watching along. I'm the chair of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our June 3rd meeting. We are beginning the meeting at 7 p.m. on the dot by my clock. Given, of course, our ongoing public health emergency, this meeting is being conducted electronically. Please note that our commission staff followed the procedures and guidelines in the enabling legislation to give adequate notice to both the commissioners, the staff, and of course the public. And this meeting, as always, is being simultaneously broadcast to the public on YouTube. So hello to those watching at home. A few reminders, of course, if you could mute when you're not speaking, that helps cut down on background noise. As always, the chat can be used for technical difficulties or assistance, but no public business may be conducted there. And then finally, when you are making a motion, it helps our clerk, Ms. Gilchrist, tremendously if you can identify yourself for the purposes of the minutes. I'm going to now turn it to Ms. Gilchrist to call the roll for quorum purposes.
Thank you. Chair Crystal.
Here.
Mr. Gary.
Present.
Mr. Elkhorn.
Here.
Mr. Bell. Ms. Bennett Parker. Mr. De Ferenti. Mr. Eben. Ms. Filler-Korn.
Present.
Mr. Faust.
Here.
Ms. Garvey.
Here.
Mr. Krizik.
Here.
Mr. Letourneau.
Present.
Mr. McKay. Mr. Meyer.
Here.
Ms. Pelchik.
Present.
Mr. Reed. Mr. Smedberg.
Present.
Mr. Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Turner.
Here.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Here.
And can I try one more time for Mr. Reed? I thought I saw him on.
I'm here, present.
Great,
And also, Madam Chair, Senator Eben is here.
great. Thank you. We do have quorum. The following staff are participating on this meeting. Executive Director Kate Mattice, Director of Finance and Administration Scott Kalkworth, Director of Programs and Policy Alan Fye, NVTC Commission Secretary Rhonda Gilchrist, Web and IT Manager Melissa Walker, WMATA Program Manager Andrew DeVetter, Commuter Choice Senior Program Manager Ben Owen, Transit Resource Center Program Manager Dan Goldfarb, Transit Technology Program Manager Patricia Happ, Program Analyst Zachary Smith, NVTC Legislative Liaison Amy Perrin-Seibert, NVTC Legal Counsel Steve McIsaac, VRE Chief Executive Officer Rich Dalton, WMATA's Virginia Government Relations Officer Greg Potts, and DRPT's Northern Virginia Senior Program Manager Major Capital Investments Tim Roseboom. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gilchrist. Okay, so I trust everyone's had a chance to review our agenda. To state the obvious, we have had some marathon commission meetings recently. We really appreciate everyone hanging with us, and Ms. Mattice and I have put our heads together to brainstorm how we can tighten things up a little bit. So with support from the NVTC staff, I'm here to report that going forward, the presentation materials are going to be a little tighter, a little briefer. We're certainly asking our outside speakers to be cognizant of that and limit themselves in presentations as well. So we're hoping that's going to keep the meeting succinct while still allowing time for discussion. One of the ways you can help with this is to review the written materials ahead of time because we will now be summarizing or receiving more summaries of them rather than more fulsome presentations. So the review of the materials ahead of time ensures that if there are nuances or details that you have questions about, you can see and surface those for the Q&A. We also are going to try to take more advantage of block voting, moving items as one vote to see if we can't cut down on the lengthy roll call votes since there are quite a few of us. So you'll see us do that tonight. I will try to give plenty of room for any concerns about voting for things in a block. I don't want this to be seen as an opportunity to constrain debate or cut off conversation if anybody would like to discuss a vote. I've got some feedback, so if you are not on mute, can I trouble you to mute yourself? Okay, I think that worked. I was saying about the block votes, please, if you have any concerns, want to consider an item separately. We've actually had a couple of commissioners suggest they'd like to consider our Envision Route 7 separately tonight, for example. So we are happy to do that. But if we can cut down on those lengthy roll call votes, we will. So the way tonight's meeting will flow is that you'll see the consent and minutes approvals that we do need to vote on. We'll hear each of the staff presentations for items 4A, 5, 6, then vote as a block on those, again, assuming no objections, and then we'll hear 7A to vote separately. Following that, we'll have our usual conversation about WMATA and the Transit Technology Program, a brief presentation on that one, and then transition to VRE. Again, we'll try to hear information about all 5 of those action items and take them as a single block vote. Does anyone have any concerns about this approach? I think I suspect there is widespread support for maybe ending a little earlier, but I also want to make sure that if anyone is concerned about the idea of block voting generally, that they have an opportunity to raise it. So I'll pause for a second and see if anybody has questions or concerns about how that might flow. Okay, hearing none. Just a quick update on our July meeting. Based upon the feedback of commissioners, thank you all to those of you who responded to Ms. Gilchrist, we will be aiming to hold our July 1st commission meeting in person at the NVTC conference space with the public and staff watching on YouTube. There will be a WebEx option, but we really do try to encourage the commissioners to come in person if you can. This assumes that the state of emergency that Virginia currently operates under is not lifted. If the governor does lift the state of emergency before our July meeting, we will be back in person, subject to electronic participation stipulations about health and safety, which we'll talk about a little bit later tonight. But so again, we'll be in person no matter what. It'll be something of a hybrid option if we are not if we are still under the state of emergency. If we are not under the state of emergency, then we especially look forward to seeing everyone in person again. And Kate will talk a little more in detail about that at the end of the meeting tonight. Okay, so just one item on our consent agenda, which is the familiar one, finding the need to conduct our meeting electronically. Before I ask for a motion on that, Kate, any public comments received tonight?
Indeed, Madam Chair, we did have one comment right before the deadline that was received and has been forwarded to the commissioners. The comment actually provides support for NVTC's work to further a bus rapid transit along Route 7. And in fact, as you just mentioned, the commission will be taking up an action to help keep study on that bus rapid transit. So that's the only comment we had tonight.
Great. We were so happy to hear from them. All right. I am looking then for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Moved. Count Alexandria.
Thank you very much.
Second,
Second.
Delegate Reed.
Seconded by Reed. Great. Any discussion about the consent agenda item? Hearing none. Ms. Gilchrist, over to you for the roll call.
Chair Crystal,
Aye.
Mr. Gary. Mr. Gary,
Aye.
thank you. Mr. Alcorn,
Aye.
Mr. Bell, Ms. Bennett Parker, Mr. De Ferrenti.
Aye.
Mr. Eben,
Aye.
Ms. Filler Korn, Mr. Faust,
Aye.
Ms. Garvey,
Aye.
Mr. Krizik,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Mr. McKay,
Aye.
Mr. Meyer,
Aye.
Ms. Pelchek,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Turner,
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Aye.
The motion passes. I turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Okay, we also have the minutes from our previous meeting. That was May 6th before us for approval. I trust everybody's had a chance to review them in the meeting materials. So I'm going to look for a motion to approve them.
So moved by Adam Eben.
Second. By Mr. Smedberg.
Excellent. Thank you both. Gentleman from Alexandria. All right. Is there any further discussion on the minutes from May? Hearing none, Ms. Gilchrist, back to you to call the roll, please.
Chair Crystal,
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn,
Aye.
Mr. Bell, Ms. Bennett Parker, Mr. Dave Ferranti,
Aye.
Mr. Eben,
Aye.
Mr. Eben,
Aye.
thank you. Ms. Filler-Korn,
Aye.
Mr. Faust,
Aye.
Ms. Garvey,
Aye.
Mr. Krizik,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Mr. McKay,
Aye.
Mr. Meyer,
Aye.
Ms. Pelchik,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Turner,
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Aye.
That motion passes too.
All right, thanks so much, Ms. Gilchrist. Okay, so now for our bullet train through our action items tonight. Again, as a reminder, we're going to hear presentations from staff on the commuter choice recommendation program of projects, opportunity for questions. We're going to hear from staff on our general and administrative budget and work plan, opportunity for questions, and then we'll go to our electronic participation policy updates, time for questions, and then we will plan to take a vote on all three. And of course, these are items that we have heard in some form or fashion at commission meetings before. So we have relatively brief presentations on each. So Ms. Matthijs, I'm going to tee it up for you to begin to introduce the first item.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And so as a reminder, staff presented the commission with the proposed list of projects for the second round of I-395-95 commuter choice funding at its last meeting in May. And so I'm here tonight to ask for the commission's approval for us to submit the list of proposed projects as well as the administrative funding to the Commonwealth Transportation Board and also then to permit us to execute the related project agreements from these approved projects. So we move to the next slide. Thank you. NVTC received a total of 40 public comments during its public comment period, and all of those supported one or more of the projects that were being proposed. And so the slide here represents the list of projects. Descriptions of those projects are included in your meeting materials. And so we ask for the commission's formal approval of this proposed list of 13 projects, as well as NVTC's oversight and administration funding, totaling $22.7 million in commuter choice funding. And with their approval, we'll forward the program projects to the CTB for their final approval later this month and issue the standard project agreements with the grantees so we can initiate the projects. And Ben, Owen, and I are both available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks so much, Ms. Matthijs. Any questions about the recommended projects that are before us on the 395-95 corridor, or questions about the process? I believe Mr. McKay chaired that joint committee of PRTC and NVTC, so thank you for your tireless service in that capacity. If you have anything to add, we'd be happy to hear it, but no obligation.
I did, Katie. Very briefly, I just want to thank all the folks who participated in, as you mentioned, was great collaboration with PRTC, our organization that works with so many things that we do at NVTC as well. And so really good, broad cross-section of folks involved in helping us get through this process. And more importantly, want to thank staff for the expert job that they did, NVTC staff, expert job that they did in being able to evaluate all of these funding requests and working with our jurisdictional partners. As we know, 395-95 affects so many jurisdictions in Virginia, and frankly, working with those jurisdictional staff has been tremendous as well. And so couldn't be happier where we are now and to have this list of projects, and at the appropriate time, happy to make a motion to approve.
Thank you very much. Well put. Thank you again for leading. Any questions about the program of projects? Okay, hearing none, we're going to hold that enthusiasm for voting on this as we get through the next couple of items in terms of presentations. Mr. Ms. Matthijs, the much anticipated general and administrative budget for fiscal 22. Of course, we had some back and forth deferring this action over the past few months to better reflect the realities of the very much changing environment we're all living through with regard to our forecasting financially.
Well, indeed, Madam Chair. And so I know that the commission has seen presentations on this a fair amount in the last year, so we appreciate your patience. And so again, we did present that final proposal to you last month of our FY22 general administrative budget and our work plan. And so we're again here tonight to seek the approval from the commission to go ahead and approve that to put it in place. So if you move to the next slide, as we shared in May, the FY22 G&A budget was developed with a conservative approach, really very much focused on maintaining a near zero growth in these uncertain times, but making sure we cover our fixed costs obligations, as well as making sure that we really are supporting the strong professional staff that we have here. And so the details of the budget justifications for each of these line items, as well as the work plan, were sent ahead of time and were included in the materials. So we do ask for the commission's support and approval of the proposed FY 2022 NVTC general administrative budget and the accompanying work plan. And Scott and I are both available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions about our fiscal 22 operating budget that would take effect next month? Okay, I think I see none. So we'll act on this after the next item, which is updating our electronic participation policy to align with current law, because there were some changes made in the General Assembly on this item last session. Kate, would you like to introduce this for us?
Happy to do so. And so indeed, we do have an electronic participation policy that NVTC has actually had in place for a number of years. And it does allow all of you to participate electronically. And so what we're presenting to you are revisions that align with the changes in law that were put in place by the General Assembly this year. And in particular, they provide more flexibility in circumstances in which participation can occur when the member needs to attend to family or personal medical condition, as well as clarifies how many meetings a year that for personal reasons, other reasons that members can participate. And so, for example, for NVTC, that basically means each commissioner can participate remotely at 2 commission or 2 committee meetings per year for any personal reason. And the other thing also does add the language that was included in legislation that if there's a local declared emergency would allow for the same flexibilities provide electronic meetings. So again, we ask for the commission's formal approval of the revised electronic participation policy.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Matthijs, and a thank you to our members of the General Assembly for voting in support of these changes to code, which are allowing us to pursue them. And of course, a particular shout out to Ms. Bennett Parker, who has fought tirelessly to organize leaders in the region to advocate for them, especially for regional commissions like us when folks may have to travel long distances. Any questions about the change in state code or the proposed changes to our own electronic participation policy reflecting them?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Adam.
Please. Yeah, Senator Evans.
Just to clarify, you can participate electronically for up to 25% of the meetings for any reason, or just if there's a medical reason?
And I have also got Amy on as well. My understanding is the 25% is any personal reason. If you have a medical condition or need to care for somebody, then it's unlimited. And Amy, just confirm that for me to make sure I've got that interpretation correct.
Yes, you are correct. That is right. So the 25% is for personal reasons, and the unlimited amount is for your medical reason or a family member's medical reason.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for clarifying. Any other questions on this one? Okay, hearing none, I think we are ready for a motion on all 3. And again, just as a reminder, that's item 4A, item 5, and item 6. If someone would like to move all 3.
Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to move all 3. It's Chairman McKay. I move approval of all 3 consent agenda items.
This is Delegate Reed, and I'll second that.
Great. Thank you so much. Any discussion about any three of the items or any concerns about voting on them altogether? Okay, hearing none, I will turn it to our secretary for a roll call vote.
Chair Crystal,
Aye.
Mr. Gary,
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn,
Aye.
Mr. Bell, Ms. Bennett Parker, Mr. Dave Ferrenti,
Aye.
Mr. Evan,
Aye.
Ms. Fillercorn,
Aye.
Mr. Faust,
Aye.
Ms. Garvey,
Aye.
Mr. Krizik,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Mr. McKay,
Aye.
Mr. Meyer,
Aye.
Ms. Pelchik,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Turner,
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you all so much. Okay, so we have another item on our regular agenda, which is an exciting one. This is about authorizing Ms. Matthijs to issue an RFP for the mobility analysis study for Envision Route 7, an exciting next step in this exciting project. So Ms. Matthijs, let me turn it over to you to just tee this one up for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And so indeed, this is a project that NVTC has been working on for several years and being very, very fortunate to work with everywhere from the NVTA as well as DRPT over the years to be able to move this study forward. And so what I have for you is the next phase of analysis, which is actually funded by the Department of Public Rail and Public Transit, as well as local match from Fairfax County, Arlington County, Alexandria, and the City of Falls Church. And this is for the Tysons to Seven Corners mobility study. And in particular, this analysis will be diving into the travel time benefits for those folks who are using bus rapid transit along that corridor. It's going to look at understanding the impacts of putting a bus rapid transit on traffic and the traffic operations, both on some dedicated lanes as well as within the mixed traffic in some of those areas. And then finally, and really this is, of course, we'll be working very closely with you and others, is this is going to involve stakeholder and community engagement process, something that, of course, we haven't been able to do that in a little bit. So we're really excited to get back out into the community to really get the conversation going about how BRT would operate in that area of Route 7. And so again, we're here to seek the Commission's approval to move forward in issuing a request for proposals so that we can get this work underway. Both Dan, Goldfarb, and I are available to answer any questions.
Excellent. So we can provide an opportunity for questions.
Madam Chair, on Dave Snyder, when it's appropriate, I'd like to put a motion on the table.
Excellent.
We had a great public comment on this, and this is a wonderful thing that will link together and that will improve equity, improve the environment, and assist in supporting our businesses and communities throughout this route. So I would very much like to move its approval when it's appropriate. Thank you.
Excellent. I think I am hearing nor seeing any other questions. So I think now is appropriate, Mr. Snyder, and thank you for championing this project, which I know will mean a great deal to the region as well as the city.
Oh, thank you. And thank all the elected officials, and especially thank you to NVTC staff. So I'll move to authorize the executive director to issue a request for proposals for Envision Route 7 Phase 4.
Second.
I think I saw I'll give it to Mr. Faust because we promised ahead of time with a very close second by Ms. Palchik. And this is a great example of the many different sets of constituents that will be directly served by this project. Okay, so unless there are any further questions about it, I think we are ready for a roll call vote. Ms. Gilchrist.
Chair Crystal,
Aye.
Mr. Gary,
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn,
Aye.
Mr. Bell, Ms. Bennett Parker, Mr. Dave Ferrenti,
Aye.
Mr. Evan.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Fillercorn, Mr. Faust,
Aye.
Ms. Garvey,
Aye.
Mr. Krizik,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Mr. McKay,
Aye.
Mr. Meyer,
Aye.
Ms. Pelchick,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Turner,
Aye.
and Mr. Walkinshaw.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you so much. All right, thanks everyone for the brief presentations and for the participation. So on to an always meaty facet of our meeting, the WMATA report. We're glad to have Mr. Smedberg and Mr. Letourneau with us tonight, and I am going to turn it over to you both to talk about, of course, our usual update, including some returns to service, which I know were newsworthy topics. I'm not sure, Mr. Smedberg or Mr. Letourneau, who is going first or presenting, so I will leave it to one of you to jump in here.
Madam Chair, I'm going to give some brief highlights of the last month's events, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Letourneau if he has any comments or color to keep things moving along. So May marked the end of Virginia's portion of the platform improvement project with the reopening of the Arlington Cemetery Station. The summer platform restructuring work will now move to Maryland with the reconstruction of 4 rail stations north of Fort Totten on the Green Line and Yellow Lines. Yesterday, the WMATA Finance and Capital Committee convened to discuss different service options and fare options for the board to consider as restrictions begin to lift around the region and schools and employers make plans for the fall. Specifically, the board was asked to consider the following questions. What level of service should WMATA provide? Should service look different than before the pandemic? Should WMATA balance revenue? How should WMATA balance revenue, ridership, and equity goals? And how should federal relief funds be applied through fiscal year 24? WMATA staff presented the committee with information on various travel trends that informed their proposals. According to staff data and ridership surveys indicate continued uncertainty about the future of commuting patterns and travel during peak periods. To encourage riders to return to transit, staff proposed improving frequencies on rail and bus throughout the day. On WMATA Rail, staff proposed extended rail hours to midnight, 7 days a week, and eventually extending Friday and Saturday hours to 1 a.m., running 8-car trains and 5 to 10 minute headways during the traditional rush hour periods and 12-minute headways throughout the day. On Metro Bus, WMATA staff proposed to restore additional bus lines and improve frequencies of 12 minutes or less on 20 lines and 20 minutes or less on 16 lines. Majority of the restored Metro Bus routes will be in Maryland and DC, and we communicated that to Metro during the meeting. In addition, well, I should say, we had a discussion with our jurisdictions, and Andrew DeVetter was very good about coordinating with everyone and putting together a list together from Mr. Letourneau and I, and we'll be working with WMATA staff on that moving forward. These recommendations are going to come forward to the board on June 10th. For various reasons, we have to move on these rather quickly so things can be in place in time for July 1st and September, right after Labor Day. WMATA also presented deferred fare changes from the original fiscal year 2021 budget for the board to consider. The changes include implementing a $1 rail to bus transfer discount or a free rail to bus discount, lowering the 7-day regional bus pass price to $12 from $15, adding local transit operators to Metro passes, and implementing a $2 weekend flat fare on rail. The deferred fare changes could take effect this fall if approved at the June meeting. Longer term, staff asked the board to consider broader changes to the fare structure, such as creating a zone fare structure, developing a group of family passes, lowering the minimum or maximum fare on rail, and a low-income fare pass. And that really does highlight the main points of discussion this past month, Madam Chair. And Mr. Letourneau, any final comments or thoughts on from you before we turn it?
I'll just maybe give just a little bit more color to a few things. So the ridership projections that WMATA is using is about a 50 to 55% return to pre-COVID levels in fiscal year 23 and a 70 to 75 in fiscal year 24. My sort of comment on that was that it seems reasonable in 23. I'm not as sure that we would see that type of growth between 23 and 24. So I did ask for some more analysis on that. As we've talked about in previous meetings, Metro is applying the federal funds to plug the budget holes in 22 and 23. It is worth noting that under these ridership scenarios, there is an operating deficit in fiscal year 24, even after applying what's remainder of the federal money. And that deficit is between 190 and 245 million, which would have to be made up either through increased jurisdictional subsidies or through some other source. And so as we talk about these different fare changes and levels of service, obviously we all have a desire to have service as frequent as possible, but there is a cost associated to that. And that number has, in terms of that 24 budget deficit, has the potential to grow the more of the federal money that we use early on to boost service and to undertake some fare discounts. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's not something you want surprising you down the road. And I think I generally favor a fairly conservative approach toward utilizing that money, since I don't think we're going to receive more federal money. And then just on a few other things, one of the things that we talked about as a sort of compromise would be potentially not doing a promotional fare per se to get people back on transit. And I've talked in the past about how I have some concerns about something really short term like that, but maybe doing additional discounts on the passes. If you buy them in the month of September, there's an additional discount besides, what we've done to lower the 7-day regional bus pass. But, for September only, you can get a certain number of trips for less. There's a lot of discussion about sort of the peak period versus all day kind of service, and the fact that we've seen traffic patterns change now, and we're seeing more steady ridership throughout the day and less of a peak. I think Paul and I are both a little concerned that Metro doesn't overreact to that, because there are still so many people who are working from home, myself included, who aren't doing their normal commuting to the downtown core for work. And when they do resume, which I think there will be a big uptick in September, I think we will still see peak periods on Metro. And so I want to make sure that we are, have the appropriate level of service for those peak periods, even if that means not being as frequent during the day. So I guess that's all I really have to offer for now. But as Paul said, we're meeting again next week, and we'll move forward on some of the short-term changes and then continuing the discussion on some of the longer-term things. Metro staff presented it as things for FY23. I personally would like to see if we could do it sooner and maybe start doing, if we're going to change Metro rail fare structure, for instance, maybe have that in place by the time that Silver Line Phase 2 opens in January or February. I don't know how achievable that is yet, but I did sort of throw that out there. So that's it for me.
And Madam Chair, if I could, and Matt, the Finance Committee Chair, Steve McMillan, and I met with staff today to follow up on our discussion yesterday. Okay. And we are going to push some of those things, make them, sooner than later. I think we have to drive that. Madam Chair, also one other thing, we're continuing. We had one round of meetings with the various regional leaders. We're meeting, the general manager and I are meeting with a larger group, including university officials, large employers, the federal government, of course, various key departments within the federal government, chamber leaders, business leaders, a whole cross-section of folks from around the region to get a better sense of what they think is happening. They're starting to see some employers starting to phase back people sooner than they expected. But most are still, I think, planning on that after Labor Day, time frame to bring folks back. But the big factor, the federal government has not made any major decisions yet as to what they're doing. So a vast majority of folks are still teleworking. Some departments are coming back just because of the nature of their business and they have to. But we have a couple meetings coming up with various leaders, so we'll report back on that.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that WMATA is doing exactly that type of engagement. I think that's some of the best ways to get perspectives on what is such a consequential
Yeah,
question.
I think one thing that is very clear that we've heard from the two secretaries of transportation, officials from the district, and business leaders around the region, they really want WMATA there for the recovery. And they personally are going to try to do everything they can to make sure that people get on transit and don't get back into their cars, to the best extent possible. So, that's the goal. We're hoping some of these initiatives will help with that. But overall, this is really sort of setting the table, if you will. And I know, Andrew and Andrew DeVetter and the NVTC staff, we are going to have to really engage with you because things are going to be changing quite a bit. Just the fare structure alone, debate and question, and where we go with fare policy. And does that model change? The model they've basically grown up with for the last 45 years. Granted, it's had changes along the way, but basically it's the model we've had for a very long time, and things are not going to be the same anymore. So, all big questions ahead.
Indeed, and probably a great opportunity to just remind our commissioners
Absolutely.
that a lot of times the place that that these sort of meatier questions are kicked around, at least on the commission, is our WMATA committee. So if you have strong points of view on this and how Northern Virginia should be taking a position, at least vis-a-vis the commission, on these questions about fare in particular, that is a great committee to join or just attend and be part of. I think we'll have an opportunity for questions here. I can just start with a comment, which is I really wanted to thank both of you, Mr. Letourneau in particular, for your advocacy. I think for those of us who've been in close contact with our jurisdictional staff, there have been real concerns about the idea of reducing headways and beefing up service on some lines in the district ahead of unfreezing our Northern Virginia lines. I think that, obviously that's happening within a context about how much to spend now, how much to bring back service, but irrespective of the size of the box, I think we have an interest in making sure it's distributed fairly within it. And I know Mr. Letourneau did a lot of outreach to our staff to advocate for very specific lines for us. I know that was a big deal to us in Arlington County, and I suspect for Fairfax Falls Church and Alexandria, that was the case as well. Okay, so questions, discussion, things you've read in the news that you want to ask about regarding Please, Ms. Garvey.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just going to kind of piggyback on what you said. I really want to thank particularly Mr. Letourneau, but really our whole WMATA team for the work they did on the bus. I mean, particularly the 16Y, much beloved, and a lot of people really concerned about the plans, and really, really appreciate your advocacy. If we're going to get people back on transit, we got to make it convenient for them. So really appreciate your kind of stepping out and doing that for us. So thank you very much. And I think we're going to be talking about fares and new ways of doing fares probably in the next item too. So I'll hold off on that, but I'm excited to hear about all of the thinking that's going on. And Mr. Smedberg, you didn't say it, but it seems to me if it's been, what would you say, 45 years, I think, since we've really changed how fares are done.
Metro is what, 45 years old, right? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's time to take a look. And I think hopefully with the pandemic and all this stuff, obviously people are a lot more open to change and realizing we need to do some things differently. So just basically a big thank you. Thanks.
I should also, Madam Chair, point out that WMATA staff and Mr. Jim, I'm having a mind blank now. Marby has been working with Andrew and a couple other jurisdictional folks to look at that bus issue as well, and was extremely helpful, I know, to Andrew and a few other folks. So I wanted to usually Metro staff doesn't get a shout out, but in this case, they definitely deserve it. So
Yeah, and just on that, so I think, as Paul said, I think we both had a concern and continue to, and I think it is a larger conversation about sort of the shifting of routes and frequencies in other places, and in particular, doing it now before we've seen the restoration of a lot of different routes in Northern Virginia. So, as was mentioned, we have submitted a request to Metro staff to reactivate several routes that were of the highest priority for the jurisdictions. A batch of them in September and then another batch in December. We're sort of waiting for the final package to come out before our meeting next week, but I think hopefully in the spirit of goodwill at the board, all those things will be part of that package.
Thank you. Other questions, topics to raise?
Chair Crystal, it's Walter Alcorn.
Hello, Mr. Alcorn, please.
So yeah, just to build on that, I think, and I know some of this has been discussed in previous meetings, but we really do need to keep an eye on the disconnect between, for Metro Bus in particular, the subsidy and service levels. Certainly with DC and Maryland getting more restoration, hopefully it'll balance out more with some of these routes coming back. But that's something that's going to be a real problem if that continues. But certainly at a jurisdictional level, we're going to, if we're paying for it, we're going to need to make sure that we're getting it. And I guess my question is on some of the budget items, like I'm thinking the bus transfer proposal. I know this was a year and a half ago, and it was out there, and there were projections then. Have those projections been updated in terms of the long-term fiscal impact? I'm just curious. I know we have federal money now, but I'm thinking about the time when that goes away.
Matt, Paul, I don't know if either of you want to respond there, have thoughts.
Walter, I can't say definitively. I'm sure some analysis, well, I know some analysis has been done, but I can't give you or feel I can give you an accurate answer or right now off the top of my head. Matt, can you? I know.
Yeah. I
know they've been dealing with it, but I don't know the specifics.
So one of the challenging things about the finance committee meeting we just had was there were a lot of different things that were on the table that we discussed, but there weren't a lot of numbers associated with it. And in case you haven't figured out by now, I'm kind of a numbers guy. I think the answer, Walter, is that I'm sure they have updated them, but I don't think it got in front of the board for that discussion. And I'm hoping that we do see a greater level of detail for next week in terms of what some of those things will cost. Now, as you might recall, as I know you recall, there was budget money that was set aside for equity as it related to the activation of phase 2 of the Silver Line, which was a requirement by federal law when the service starts. And I asked the question last week, earlier this week, time is just flying, yesterday, whether that budget item could cover something like this, because it is providing additional service to the entire system, whether that would sort of qualify. I didn't get a direct answer at the meeting yet. It was one of those things that I think staff was going to get back to me on. So it could be that line item, I think it was 20 million in the 22 budget for equity, that this could be a piece of that, but I'm not positive yet.
Yeah, Matt, and I think, and Walter, I think that's part of it. And I think that if I recall, someone made reference to this once, gave a general estimate of what this would cost. And relatively speaking, the number is really not that large, in the scheme of things. So it's, it's something that they feel that they can, cover, easily, even without, the federal funds. And the ultimate goal here, and one that was expressed by several board members yesterday, is this whole, moving toward a more seamless system between bus, rail, bus, however you want to look at it, including, regional bus services. So, that's the ultimate goal here.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I know there are a lot of thorny issues right now and a lot of uncertainty about the longer term ridership patterns. I mean, on not just Metro Rail, but I know Metro Bus as well as congestion comes back on our roadways. So
yeah, but in terms of an equity issue, one thing they do know, Walter, is that the people that are transit dependent, that extra $1 or $2 makes a huge difference to them.
Yeah, and I want to thank you also for trying to figure out a good use for that $20 million equity payment. I mean, I was at Herndon High School's graduation yesterday, 31% white, 48% free or reduced lunch. That's the pyramid for, the 3 of the stations that are opening up. So, thank you for putting that to good use. Hopefully that'll happen.
Well, thank you for asking some good questions. And I know you raised that point as well, that perhaps the federal criteria that are setting what counts as an underprivileged catchment area for equity issues are not taking the full measure of our communities into account.
Chair Crystal, I mean, just so everybody knows, so the reason this is happening is because the entire discussion is totally dependent on the 2016 passenger survey at Reston Willie Avenue. And that's what they're basing the projected demographics of the ridership for phase 2 on. I don't think that that's fair or makes a lot of sense, but by the time that was really an issue in front of the board, it was too late to change it. There was an option apparently at the very beginning of the process to go by census tract, and perhaps that would have netted a different result. So that's sort of what the kind of the basis of that analysis is. And I mean, it's hard. I don't know how exactly you project what the ridership is going to be in the future for a service that doesn't exist today. I do think the demographics will change some when those stations open. And also, I would also mention that the ridership at Dulles Airport is not going to just be business travelers, but hopefully a lot of people who work there as well. So there was a lot of frustration on how this kind of developed, but we're sort of, it is what it is, and so let's make the best of it and provide improvements through this that benefit everybody. And Andrew is on the spot and is telling me that the full transfer discount would be $4.9 million in FY22. So there you go.
Thanks,
which is currently that's the full discount, which is not on the table.
That's a full. That's the full.
Yeah.
And Walter, both Matt and I both pressed staff to, Todd Wigglesworth and other folks on the jurisdictional call a couple days ago. This whole idea of having the numbers and not only the current subsidy, but what future subsidy estimates may be when some of these things change, and really pushing WMATA staff to give some clarity to that, or some help to jurisdictional staff as they begin to plan and think out their budgets. So we both pushed that issue that we need to see some of those numbers as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Other questions? Commentary? Well, I'd like to invite our vice chair, as I was talking about the good work of the WMATA committee. Should have turned it over to you sooner, Mr. Akira, to talk about the goings on and the conversations happening at that committee this past month.
Madam Chair. So at our May 20th WMATA committee meeting, can you guys hear me okay? Okay. We received an update on staff's approach to the 2021 annual report on the performance and condition of WMATA, as well as staff's upcoming work on the 3% working group companion document. The committee was supportive of staff's approach for the 2021 annual report, but we also stressed that we will need to approach this report with a lot of flexibility since we're entering into a post-COVID recovery period. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the plug earlier, because as you mentioned, anything WMATA related, if you want to come discuss it, you're always happy to have you come join us, because our next meeting is going to be June 30th. We'll continue our discussions on the 2021 annual report, get an update from the 3% cap working group's work for 2021, as well as updates from our WMATA board members, And just to note, we did have a very, very robust conversation at the last meeting about fares and other things. And I'm very happy to see that that discussion has continued with our board members. So thank you to Mr. Smedberg and to Mr. Letourneau for carrying that conversation on. And still a lot to see, a lot to be done. Thank you.
Thanks. Excellent. All right. Any other questions or items before we move on from WMATA? Okay, seeing none, although not moving on entirely, because certainly WMATA is an important feature of the next item, which is our transit technology program. And we are glad to bring in tonight Patricia Happ, who is our program manager for the transit technology program. And I will just note on a personal note, had the opportunity for the first time to use the mobile app on an art bus this afternoon. It went swimmingly, gave me a little thrill that the future is here. And glad to be able to turn it over to you, Ms. Happ, to tell us what's coming next.
Great. I saw your tweet about that. I'm glad it worked out. So welcome to the update on the Transit Technology Program. I'm Patricia Happ, and just a brief sentence on the Transit Technology Program implements the Northern Virginia Regional Fare Collection Strategic Plan, and that's the short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions to improve fare collection equipment throughout the region. And so I'll just touch on two quick items of advancement that we've seen that NVTC has supported the partners in the past few months. Those are fare box improvements and then mobile payment. So in terms of fare box improvements, we've assisted partners with 120 or over 120 upgrades for fare box equipment throughout the regional buses. And then we're also working with partners to assist with new fare boxes in that the WMATA has signed a contract with Cubic to procure new fare boxes, and regional partners will be as well. And those should be ready in 2022. And the type of support that we provide is for onboard, garage, and offboard equipment. And so in terms of mobile payment, the Smart Trip app, as you know, was released last fall for iPhone and Apple, and then the Google and Android version is it's currently being tested and expected to be released. We don't know exactly when, but sometime in the near future. And so that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. Questions for Ms. Happ or thoughts on this? Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Question? Oops.
Yeah, Ms. Garvey.
Yes. Sorry, Patricia. Real quick.
No, don't apologize at all.
Somehow all these buttons, it just takes a while to get them to click. Actually, two questions in a way. So I see the Google, the mobile payment for Google is coming and soon. So I guess that's good. I have no clue how this works, but it seems weird to me if Apple can get it working and going pretty well, why they can't get the Android going. But anyway, that's sort of an interesting thing. And are we looking at, what about, coming on boarding and fare collection on the rear door? Is that part of all of this?
Yes, it is. The part of the new fare box procurement is rear door validation. And so rear door validators are for those systems that choose to procure rear door validators. They can do that starting next summer.
Okay, great. And no better idea than soon on the Google app, mobile app. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks a lot.
It's a great point about the rear door boarding and of course the capacity for off-board fare collection, right? Is really exciting for those of us involved in these BRT projects who would like to be able to see our buses move rapidly through the corridors, fulfilling the R in the BRT promise. Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Happ, thank you so much. And Ms. Garvey, thanks for the good questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have next the Virginia Railway Express. I think we are going to turn first to Mr. Dalton for a presentation, and we're glad to have him with us this evening.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I will be concise and brief here because I know we do have some action items to get through. So and good evening, other commission members and others. You do have the VRE CEO report and the update memo in your packet. So I'm just going to speak briefly to some highlights and updates. As I've spoke at the last commission meeting, maybe the last couple, and of course at our operations board meeting, our ridership continues to increase slightly, but in the right direction. And for a host of reasons, we were also looking at returning to our full schedule, which takes us from the 18 trains that we had been running predominantly throughout the pandemic back to the 32 trains. So we did make that move Tuesday, June 1st. We returned to a full schedule. With the full schedule, we also implemented our seasonal schedule on select PM Fredericksburg line trains that adjust for heat orders. System-wide on-time performance for the month of May was down compared to previous months, actually down compared to the last year and a half. We've been operating at about 92%. Our on-time performance for May was 87%. And all of that happened in the last 2 weeks of May. Primarily, we had a couple of signal outages, one on the CSX, one on the NS or Norfolk Southern, that right in the middle of our commuting window that effectively brought all trains to a stop. And we were there for not a long time, about 12, 13 minutes, but that resulted in all of those trains being delayed. We also had some weather-related delays. We did have one mechanical issue. We had some interference from some late Amtrak trains and some freight train interference. And on what would be the positive side, we did have some delays that were accountable to maintenance of way activities out there. And of course, I think as most of you know, this time of year, once the weather breaks a little bit, it warms up. Our host railroad like to go out and do maintenance, which is not a bad thing for us to see. But in those cases, there was some extended work that wasn't necessarily anticipated when the gangs went in there, and so it did delay a few extra trains. So I will say that we do meet every morning with our host railroads, Norfolk Southern, Amtrak, and CSX, and our collective teams, Keolis, VRE staff. We review those previous days' delays and look for those opportunities. And then just one finer point, most, if not all of these, were not necessarily systemic. They were kind of random and some things that we haven't seen in a while. So I'm not here to alarm you, but I'm also here to not report, as I have been consistently, I think for 10 months in a row or 8 months in a row, 93% system on-time performance. That's not the number this month. So, and then just give you another metric. In the month of April, of course, our average daily ridership was about 1,500, and our average daily ridership in May was 1,800. And starting last week and continuing into this week, we're seeing ridership numbers, average ridership numbers above 2,000 and increasing about 75-100 a day right now. So, and then lastly, I just wanted to put a plug in here. This Saturday, we will be in the city of Manassas for the 26th Annual Heritage Railway Festival. This is something that VRE has participated in for many years. The event will run from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and VRE will have a locomotive cab car combo on display on the siding in front of the candy store, or the candy factory, if you're familiar with that area out there. Point of note, we will not operate excursion trains, which we normally do, but it's good to see this festival return, and VRE is proud to be partnered with those folks out there to highlight rail. We'll have Operation Lifesaver will be out there. We'll be emphasizing safety around the rail, so it'll be a good event. That is the end of my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dalton. And that does sound like a good event indeed. Maybe a sign that things are returning to normal, along with a sign that things are returning to summer, which is those slow down on time performance numbers, which we all reconcile ourselves to each year with the heat advisory. So thank you for giving us the update there. I know that our VRE chair and Ops Board chair and NVTC commissioner is pulling off a large scale event for her day job to better the community in a different way this evening. So I actually am just going to ask Mr. Dalton, while we've got him here, if you wouldn't mind letting us know about the action items that the Operations Board recommended this commission approve this evening. And then again, as is our new practice tonight, we'll take them as a block unless any commissioner would prefer otherwise.
Find the mute button there. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, let me, I'll briefly go through these, and of course I can come back and go into any level, or hopefully answer any questions or go into any level of detail. So 10C up here, this is authorizing the CEO to execute an amendment for the first year of the first option period for contract maintenance services for commuter rail with Keolis Rail Services Virginia. This one specifically, it's two parts. One is, again, authorizing that first option period, which is 5 years. Then, of course, amending the contract to include the what essentially is the budget for FY22 to keep our rolling stock fleet maintained. 10D is somewhat similar. It's the other contract with Keolis Rail Services Virginia. This is where we're seeking authorization to amend the second year of the second option period of the contract for the operating services. And again, these amounts are stated in the resolution that you have. And again, this will provide us with management, certified train engineers, certified train conductors for fiscal year 22. 10E, this is approval to authorize the CEO to execute a contract with Awesome Transportation, Inc. of New York, for the purchase of 21 new rail cars, and just consistent with System Plan 2040, specifically the Manassas and Fredericksburg line capacity improvement plans. This resolution will authorize a contract for 21 new multi-level passenger cars, and specifically these are new rail cars. They're fully compatible, or will be fully compatible, with our existing fleet. And this contract also has some options in there that we could later exercise if needed. Couple points of note: the funding for these new rail cars is provided in part by both Smart Scale and I-66 outside the Beltway concessionaire funding. And of course, this project is somewhat the lead, if you will, of various other programs that add capacity in the form of seats. And let's see, 10F. This is an authorization to enter into a right-of-way agreement with Rappahannock Electric Cooperative for an electric utility easement. And this is at our Crossroads Maintenance and Storage Facility as part of our life cycle and overhaul upgrade facility program out there. And essentially, this is an easement for Rappahannock Electric to be able to come on our property, or this is actually property owned by the commissions, and upgrade some underground services, and of course have the accessibility to that equipment, if to maintain it, and to make repairs, whatever they need to do. And just from a visual, this is about a 15-foot wide, slightly less than 2,000-foot easement that we're seeking. And then finally, 10G, what we're asking is the commission approve the amended FY22 operating budget. And just as some background there, after the FY 2022 operating capital budgets were adopted, The federal government approved additional pandemic relief funds for transit, and what we're simply doing is just incorporating a portion of these revenues into the FY 2022 operating budget. And then more specifically, these have been discussions at the operations board level the past couple of months regarding strategic uses of the relief funds. This action will reduce jurisdictional subsidies, or at least the operating portion of jurisdictional subsidies in FY 22 by the amounts. There's a table in your board package there. And in addition to that, we'll also not seek track access reimbursements from the Commonwealth. And just one final point, total planned expenditures are unchanged and the FY 2022 budget remains balanced. Whew. That's
Well
my
done.
summary.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbs. And these were, of course, each subjects of good conversation at the operations board meeting a couple weeks ago. So I know we've got Mr. Walkinshaw present. I'm not sure if Mr. Storks joined us this evening. Certainly I'm here. If there are any questions that you'd like to hear from an ops board member perspective, although I think Mr. Dalton has done an even better job than we can summarizing them. While you're oh, please, yeah, I was about to say, while you're formulating your questions.
We shifted things around a little bit, but I do know that it was very exciting to show a little video.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly, I was just going to see if we could, before we jump into the video, just to see if there were any questions about any of those items that we went through pretty quickly. Okay, seeing none. Ms. Matthijs is right. We do have a video that has been exciting to us on the ops board. Obviously, the purchase of rail cars is a big deal for our system. This is a new vendor. Of course, these will be compatible with the existing rail cars in the fleet, but an exciting moment of transition for our riders once they come into the system. So we're excited to share this with you this evening. So, Ms. Matthijs, thank you, and over to you. We're waiting for someone on team commission to, perfect.
I'll just add, Madam Chair, and that this video, some of the color palettes and some of the other features that you'll see are not the final version. This is just a way of depicting at least what some of the features and characteristics of these cars are. So again, some of those design attributes are not final yet.
They will be in the signature VRE patriotic red, white, and blue, right?
They will be, or that is the recommendation.
Alstom's Coradia multi-level sets the stage for a new era in VRE commuter rail service. Passengers will enjoy an enhanced travel experience with multiple side doors on each car to improve passenger flow and reduce dwell times at stations, level boarding that promotes accessibility for all passengers while maintaining interoperability with the existing fleet. The Coradia multi-level boasts an improved stainless steel car body with a structural design meeting the latest FRA crashworthiness standards for the safest ride. Easy access to aid removal of components such as brake discs and HVAC units shorten maintenance durations. The new cab cars will feature a new expandable design for the operator. Enhanced diagnostics and connected systems mean better fleet maintenance, operations, reliability, and availability. The choices of materials, treatments, and touchless features promote easier cleaning and a sanitary interior for healthy journeys, reassuring passengers, and enhancing satisfaction. The interior offers fluidity and efficiency. Level boarding and wide vestibules promote access for persons with reduced mobility and passenger exchange. Bicycle and luggage areas enable intermobility, which can help attract new passengers and promote sustainable mobility. For passenger safety and security, centered lower level to mid-level stairs improve sight lines for VRE personnel, and CCTV reassures passengers of their safety. Passenger flows for boarding and circulation throughout the cars offer a welcoming and modern feel for VRE customers. Lifts on each car will assist persons with mobility assistance devices. ADA, fully accessible restrooms, and dedicated seating areas enhance accessibility and inclusivity for VRE passengers. The passenger is at the heart of the design, from more personal space to modern filtration systems for air quality and circulation to the latest cybersecurity technology. Features that ensure the safety and integrity of the entire train, reassure passengers, and provide a comforting environment. The open interior is flooded with natural light via large windows so riders can look outside and enjoy the passing landscape and views. The Caridia multi-level will bring a new and improved experience for commuters between Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C.
Great. Thank you so much for bringing that for us tonight, Mr. Dalton. A picture is worth 1,000 words and video is probably worth more still. All right. If there are no other questions about the new rail cars or about any of the other action items, I am going to open the floor for a motion again, potentially for these as a block, unless there are any objections. Mr. Walkinshaw, would you like to do the honors in Ms. Bennett Parker's absence?
Sure, yeah, Madam Chair, I move approval of action items C, D, E, F, and G as a block.
Second. Reed, I second.
Great, thank you so much, Delegate Reed and Mr. Walkinshaw. All right, if there are no further questions, I'm going to turn it to Ms.
Just a
Gilchrist.
comment. I thought the video was cool and the cars look great. Thank you.
That's a good comment. Great. Any others? Okay. Well, thank you all so much. I think we are ready for a roll call vote. Ms. Gilchrist.
Chair Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn. Mr. Alcorn.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Bell. Ms. Bennett Parker. Mr. Dave Ferrenti.
Aye.
Mr. Eben.
Aye.
Ms. Filler-Korn.
Aye.
Mr. Faust.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey.
Aye.
Mr. Krizik.
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau.
Aye.
Mr. McKay.
Aye.
Mr. Meyer.
Aye.
Ms. Pelchik.
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg.
Aye.
Mr. Snyder.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Turner.
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Aye.
The block vote passes. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you so much. Okay. I know that Director Mitchell is not able to join us this meeting, so we are glad to join. It's still strange to say DRPT's Tim Roseboom with us this evening to give that report. Mr. Roseboom, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's sometimes weird to hear it, so I appreciate appreciate that. Yeah, Director Mitchell couldn't be here. She sends her regards. There's a written report. Just a couple of things that I'd like to draw your attention to in the written report. There's a nice write-up of the Transit Ridership Incentive Program, or the TRIP program. And the reason I bring that up is it's out for comment right now. We're bringing a policy to the CTV next month, and it's out for comment. And then we're opening it up to applications in July. So hopefully, we'll get a lot of applications from jurisdictions. We're also coming to the commission to brief the commission on that program next month. So it's a nice little preview, of what's happening next month. And then the other item that I'd like to just draw your attention to is the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, the VPRA. They did pass their budget at their May meeting. They also authorized the executive director to sign the CSX agreement, the agreement that'll pave the way for the Transforming Rail in Virginia improvement. So that is all for the DRPT report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. All right, hearing none. Ms. Matthijs, glad to have a little time in the relative beginning of the evening where we're all still fresh instead of having you follow a lengthy evening tonight. I'm going to turn it over to you for an update.
Well, Madam Chair, I promise I will not fill all the time, even though we have a lot of it this evening. And so, as always, I encourage you to take a look at the Executive Director newsletter, which really highlights a lot of the activities that have happened over the course of this last month. And also our financial reports are in there as well. So indeed, a reminder, the WMATA committee will be meeting the night before our July 1st meeting. They're meeting on June 30th at 6 p.m. and really diving into our big annual report on performance and condition. A lot of that stuff you got a preview of earlier. We strongly encourage any commissioners who are interested in doing a deep dive on WMATA issues to participate in that meeting. And again, 6 p.m. on the 30th of June. And indeed, our next full commission meeting will be Thursday, July 1st at 7 p.m. And in addition to having the opportunity to see folks in person, which I know we're all looking forward to, it is quite possible that Representative Don Beyer will be joining us. It might be, I do need to make that full disclosure, but he would like to come and say hello to the commission. And so we're happy to have him come and do so at the beginning of the meeting. And the other thing, and Tim just mentioned this, really the focus of that meeting is going to be focused on different opportunities, different case studies, and our white paper related to reduced fare and free fare, zero fare type of options that are out there. So we hope to have some, again, succinct presentations, but a good opportunity for discussion, because that's a lot of things that are happening within our so logistically, when it comes to July commission meeting, as we mentioned, we are working towards it being an in-person meeting. And again, this would be, for some of you, it's been a long time. For all of us, it's been a long time. For some of you who didn't even get used to it, which is our main floor conference facility at the NVTC office buildings. We are going to still strongly encourage members of the public and staff to be participating by watching either on YouTube, and of course, if those need to participate on WebEx. Indeed, if the governor's executive order on the state of emergency changes what it means to do a virtual meeting, we will absolutely need an in-person quorum. So obviously, myself and Rhonda and others will be reaching out as we get closer to the date to make that. We do hope, we are working towards accommodating those who need to participate via WebEx. And because obviously that's going to be adhering to the policy that you just passed. And so again, stay tuned, but we are queuing everything up, even the opportunity for commissioners to be able to get a box dinner right ahead of time. So, so again, questions, comments, please just let me know. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Questions for Ms. Matthijs? I'm really looking forward to that white paper. I think that's an interesting topic that's certainly on the minds of those that will WMATA, and I think for a lot of us in our jurisdictions too. So thanks to the team for leading. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I think we are, without objection, ready to wrap up this evening. I am really looking forward to seeing everyone in person, or nearly everyone in person, whatever the case may be, next month on July 1st. Thanks for bearing with the faster version of the meeting. Feedback very welcome. If you all felt like this pace didn't allow for sufficient time for questions or concerns, I'm sure there's probably a happy medium we can seek to strike as well, while still getting everyone out of here before it's too late. Okay, hearing nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us. Thank you. See everyone in person on July 1st.